Hello everybody, welcome to Oscar Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I am trying to hit 100k subscribers on the channel by the end of the year, so your subscription would be much appreciated. Also drop a like, only takes 1 second, it makes a massive difference. So, wasn't really planning on doing this video, but a report just came out that James Harden is going to miss the next month of the NBA season with some sort of foot injury, and I wanted to talk about what that means for James as well as what that means for the 76ers. Now, normally a month-long injury really wouldn't be something that would get me to make a video about the subject. However, I think in the case of James Harden and specifically the Sixers situation as well, it's going to be a little bit more impactful than it would otherwise be for a star player to miss a month. Because frankly, I think the Sixers are constructed in such a way that not having one of their top two players can be detrimental. Not that they are going to be incapable of winning games without James Harden by any means, and they've already won games, I believe at least one game, I think it might have been two, without Joel Embiid, but being that this team started off the season as poorly as they did, and being that on the flip side of that, James Harden started the season as well as he has, I have concerns both for how James will return from this injury and how the team will do in his absence. So let's talk about the first half of that, which is James himself. I am concerned because obviously he's been dealing with injury stuff over the past couple of years, specifically as it relates to his hamstring. This is a foot injury, so at the very least, it's not an injury to an area of concern for him. This is probably more of a freak injury. Now, this could end up being something that creates something else chronic to deal with, but, you know, assuming that does not happen, at the very least, you can take the positive sign that it was not related to his hamstring issues that have plagued him over the last 2 years. I believe it's the hamstring. I'm like 90% sure. I hope I didn't get that wrong. However, a big issue with James Harden, and this is something that I can relate to some extent, the guy puts on weight rather easily. And when you're rehabbing an injury, you don't necessarily have time or the ability to keep said weight off. There are different ways to go about it for sure, and I'm sure there are things that can be done to prevent it from happening. But if you go a long enough stretch without being able to work out and especially play NBA level basketball, because as we hear at the start of every NBA season, actually getting into NBA level shape requires playing NBA level basketball. So if James is going to go a long stretch of time without that, that would allow him to potentially slip physically. Of course, it's also very well possible he comes back just fine. But that's a concern that I would have for him, is him gaining weight and then having to play into shape throughout the season and how that will affect him when he comes back. Not to mention the fact that that extra weight can then lead to further injuries. But it is also the fact of his rhythm, you know? Like, he started off the season really hot, and to have that just come to an end and he's now going, assuming that of this month out, the first 2 weeks, no basketball activities at all, something like that. If that were to happen, I would be concerned with how that would throw off his rhythm, and maybe this early season turning things around kind of mitigates itself, and it's like maybe we jumped the gun on that. Overall, I would guess that probably he's a step slow for like 2, maybe 3 weeks coming back from this injury, but he gets back to where he was to start the year. So that's my prediction in that department, and I'm a little less concerned about that. What I'm more concerned about the fact is that the Sixers are playing 500 basketball, or at least roughly that right now. I have not checked their record in like 2 days. I don't know if they've even played a game or not. They probably did. But I would be concerned about how they are going to do without James. Not because obviously they were capable of winning without James Harden. They did it before he got there, obviously. Embiid was well on his way to an MVP campaign, and the Sixers being one of the top seeds in the conference before James is even a part of a team. However, the way the roster is currently constructed, there are so little options to actually score the ball. There are so many role players that are not guys who are going to create their own offense that I do have concerns that they're going to take a big decline on that end. And the thing is, last year's Sixers while they were not offensive rating, I don't think they were anywhere outstanding. I do, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe they were a pretty damn good defensive team at the very least in the top half of the league. Meanwhile, to open this year, they have not been that because Joel Embiid has looked a step slow on that end, and a bunch of new players and personnel. The fact that their perimeter defense is not anything particularly special, other than PJ Tucker being pretty good. So I would worry that if you're going to take an offensive hit and your defense is already not good, then that's really going to be a problem. Because if you're going to be bad on both ends, or if you're going to be bad on one end and just okay on the other, when you could be great if you had James Harden, that's not going to be a recipe towards winning a ton of games. That's probably going to lead to, at best, continuing to be a 500 ball club. And I know that's not the standards that the Sixers have set for this season. And historically speaking, I mentioned this in a recent video, teams that are below 500 in their first 10 games have never won a championship. Now, that's not to say that something like that is impossible. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the Celtics were roughly in that category last year, and then they ended up making the finals and being just 2 games away from actually winning. So, conventions like that are not like guaranteed that's how it's going to work. If 10 games have passed and you're below 500, you're guaranteed you're not going to win a championship. But historically speaking, it's not a good sign if you start off that way. So if they have issues winning games for a long stretch of time, then James Harden comes back and he's a little sluggish to start, and it takes some time for him to get back into NBA level shape. That could spell the Sixers being like the 9th seed come the start of 2023, and they're having to build things back up to actually win a championship or be a top seed in the Eastern Conference. So this is a month-long injury that I think has potential to seriously have ramifications for the Sixers and James Harden, far more than it otherwise would. And I was actually starting to feel pretty good about the Sixers. Like, Tyrese Maxey has looked good. Tobias Harris has actually been surprisingly good within the flow of that offense, which I was really afraid of. I especially did not like how he fit there when they traded for James Harden initially, but it seems as though a training camp has made that look a little bit less awkward. But having James out now, that's going to change the chemistry of the team. That's going to change the dynamics of the offense. Joel Embiid's going to have to step up. Tyrese Maxey's going to have to step up as a ball handler. And what's going to happen when James Harden comes back? Is there going to be some sort of weird feeling to that? It's a month-long stretch to the point where I wouldn't be worried about it affecting chemistry too much, but it's also enough that I'm just afraid that, I don't think this was the right time for James Harden to be dealing with his injury. If the Sixers had started the season off really well, like they probably should have, then maybe I wouldn't be too concerned, but this could actually be seriously problematic for the Sixers. Hope I'm wrong. Contrary to popular belief, I do not hate the Sixers. I am not a Sixers hater. I've just always had reasons to doubt them and expressed said doubt, and was nothing but correct about that doubt, by the way. The only year that I've ever truly believed they would be the team that could really win a championship, I picked them, I believe, to come out of the conference when they had Jimmy Butler. But since then, not so great for Philadelphia. But I'm not saying this is spelling doom for any of them by any means. I just don't think it's the right foot forward, and that can make the difference in how a season goes. If you start things off rough, it is not easy to turn them around, even if you have the talent. I was going to say even if you have the coaching, but you don't. It's Doc Rivers. So, hopefully this doesn't end up being a big deal, but I think it has the potential to be. I really hope it's not, though. Especially because I've been enjoying seeing James Harden back to being James Harden. I thought I disliked watching James Harden in the past. Turns out I disliked watching a bad version of James Harden a lot more. So I'm glad that he's been back, and I hope that he comes back healthy, as you do with anybody that gets hurt, save for like a piece of shit player, But and I can't even think of an example right now because all those players are currently getting kicked out of the league, as they should be. But yeah, that is it. Goodbye.